Hello, and welcome everybody to my Odoo Experience talk titled Talampaya, the International Ultimate Frisbee Tournament powered by Odoo. So please make sure you scan the QR code at the bottom of the screen so you can submit some questions after my talk. And 3 lucky people who submit questions today will receive a free light up Frisbee. So please do feel free to participate and add questions throughout the talk. Thanks. All right, so first off, let's start with a brief introduction. My name is Nemo. I'm one of the tournament directors for Talampaya from this year in 2024. And I've also been a part of the organizing committee the past 3 years. So here you can see some photos of me participating in my sport. And my club, the Geneva Flying Disc Wizards, we actually won the first place for our national championships for the beach Ultimate Frisbee Tournament in 2023. And we then also were the runner-up in second place for the grass edition in 2023 as well. So yeah, just a quick shout out to my home club team. Great, so what even is Ultimate Frisbee? Well, I'm really glad you asked. So if you don't know already, Ultimate Frisbee is a mixed team sport that's played 7v7, so 7 people versus 7 people, on the line for every point. And you can actually score goals by passing the Frisbee to one of your teammates who will catch it in the end zone, in the opposing team's end zone. And the idea is that once you've caught the disc and you have it, you actually can't move. So you have to stop running, and then you have to look down the field and try to throw the disc within 10 seconds to the next person. And your goal is to kind of move down the field and eventually get into one of those end zones to score a point. And if the disc hits the ground, then the other team, the opposing team, picks up the disc and they start moving in the opposite direction. And what's really cool about Ultimate Frisbee is that it's a self-refereed game, which means there are no referees. Everybody who plays is responsible for knowing the rules and understanding the rules and calling out other players when the rules aren't followed correctly and making sure that the game proceeds in a fair manner. And the entire sport was actually founded on what we call the principles of the spirit of the game and this concept of fair play and being very competitive, but also very fair in how you can be an athlete. And so now I'll tell you a little bit more about what exactly Talampaya is. So Talampaya is an international mixed ultimate Frisbee tournament that we host in Geneva, Switzerland every year. And my local club, the Geneva Flying Disc Wizards, hosts that tournament. And so during a 3-day weekend every year in May, we basically welcome 350 players from all over Europe to participate in our tournament. And so we have to house them in camping on site near the fields. And then we have to feed them breakfast and provide options for them to have lunch. And then again, feed them dinner. And most importantly, we have to provide amazing weather for them to play 3 days of highly competitive mixed ultimate Frisbee. And so for the past 2 years, we've actually used Odoo to organize the tournament. So that's why I'm here today, is to tell you a little bit more about how Odoo has helped us in making the organization of the tournament more efficient. And so we started using Odoo for Talampaya in 2023 with the V16 Community Edition, so the open source edition. And it's been hosted by Sidexis, which is our Odoo partner, and I'll tell you a little bit more about Sidexis a little bit later. In 2024, really all major functions were centralized on Odoo. So that includes the website, which I'll show you in a few minutes, which was created by people who had never used Odoo before and had never done the design of a website before. We also used surveys from Odoo to actually track the registration of the teams and the players, and then eventually to collect feedback from those players after the tournament. We used the purchase app from Odoo to define requirements for the vendors we had to work with in RFQs, and then actually send those out to the vendors from Odoo and get responses. We used the project management app in the organizational committee to basically track all of our tasks and make sure that everybody was on progress and on track for all the different tasks they had to do, such as confirming vendors for the food or creating the volunteer schedule, creating the game plan eventually, working with on-site caterers, working with the on-site representatives of the sports complex to make sure that we knew which fields we could use and where we could get electricity during the event and all those things. We also used the inventory management aspects of Odoo to actually register the inventory of the products that we only had to pay our consumption for. So this was in particular for like the beer, for example. Like we had a number of kegs of beer that we received from our vendor, and then we only had to pay for the open kegs. So we used the inventory to track them and make sure we didn't lose any throughout the weekend, which is pretty important. And then finally, the main function that we used during the weekend was actually the point of sale. So we used the point of sale for our bar for selling drinks and food, and we also used the point of sale for selling the merchandise, all the swag that we had, like our jerseys and our discs and things like that. And then finally, we used the invoicing app in Odoo. So in the community edition, there isn't the accounting app actually, but there's an invoicing app that allows us to see some sort of financial information, but not the fully fledged financial reporting you would find in the enterprise edition accounting app. And we downloaded a third-party module for Partner Ledger, which enabled us to see all of the money our players loaded on their accounts, and then all the consumptions that they had throughout the weekend, so that at the end of the weekend, if they still had money on their account, we could reimburse them, essentially. And by far, the biggest value added of Odoo was the fact that we had full traceability on the sales throughout the weekend, and we had an ability to plan better year over year based off of what the consumption looked like in the prior year and how many people attended. And so that kind of value added manifests itself in the fact that, for example, next year, like we're not going to get an ice cream machine again because we realized that we don't sell enough ice cream, and it's really dependent on the weather, and just renting the machine and picking up the machine, which is this huge thing, and putting it in the right place is not worth the effort. And so we're going to have to find kind of another option to replace the ice cream, but it's really not profitable for us. And we would have never realized that if we hadn't been tracking in Odoo how many ice creams we're actually selling, and if we didn't have that data to help us understand what our margins kind of look like. And so that being said, there's only one part of the Odoo Community Edition that we had to customize for this particular tournament, and that was in relation to that Partner Ledger Oka module that I mentioned. So Sidexis helped us in making sure that when we used the customer account through the point of sale, that we could not that it was the opposite of how the Odoo base works. So the Odoo base customer account allows you to proceed with a point of sale with basically putting the customer into a debt, basically. So usually the way the Odoo base works is you trust your customers, and so you let them put a sale on their customer account, and then at the end of the month, you invoice them for all of the sales that they had on their customer account, and you make them pay just one time at the end of the month. We wanted to do the opposite, which is that we wanted to provide a cashless experience, but we wanted to separate the point of sale for the bar, in particular for the alcohol, from where we collected the money. And so we wanted people to prepay. And so we kind of flipped the Odoo-based workflow for the customer account on its head, and we required people to preload money on their account through various different methods, and then once they had money on their account, they could go to the bar and identify themselves and consume things up until the amounts that they had on their account, but not more. And so that's what I'll show you today in the demo. So we'll go through a demo now in one of our test systems of actually creating a new team or company in the Odoo Contacts app and adding players to that team. It'll be the Sidexis team in this case, and it'll be some of my coworkers from Sidexis. And then we'll go ahead and we'll register a payment for a player to load money onto their customer account. Then we'll switch to the point of sale app, and we'll actually register a sale for some food and some drinks. And then we'll switch to that partner ledger that we downloaded through the Oka module, and we'll show how the partner ledger enables us to see the entire summary of all the payments and all the consumptions done for that particular player. And at the end, we'll try to do what's customized and what we restrict, which is we'll try to complete a transaction for more than the amount on the customer account, and we'll see how we're blocked in the workflow. And we're told you either have to decrease the quantity and the price, or you have to add more money onto your account. So let's go ahead and do that demo together right now. So the first thing I actually wanted to show you in this first tab is the website. So we made this website, talampaya.ch, for the tournaments, and you can see here This was just pretty much an informational website where we had all the information about the theme for this year's tournament, which was the Olympics, like a lot of tournaments in the Ultimate Frisbee world this year. We also provided information about the key dates and the timeline for registering your team, for example, as well as when the tournament registration was open, there was a link to the form to actually register your team and submit a bid. And then we had all the FAQs about the key tournament information. And again, that website was created by people who didn't have any website design experience and had never used Odoo before, and we just showed them through how they can use the drag and drop and the easy website editing tools to do this in Odoo. If we switch to the next tab, you'll now see the contacts. So here, if I search for Sidexis, our Odoo partner, you'll see here we have a contact for the Sidexis team. And if I scroll down to the bottom, we have sub-contacts for the different team members and some of myself and some of my colleagues. And what I'll highlight here is that in the contact name, this is something we did, is so we pre-imported before the start of the tournament all of the teams, and we pre-imported all the names of all the users. And then when the teams checked in, we gave them a certain number of bracelets with identifiers on the bracelets for their team. And they had to basically give those out to all their players according to how many players they had paid to participate in the tournament. And so in this case, you can see here, like I put in parentheses S1 next to my name. And that's because you can imagine as I went to load my account for the first time, I would go and I would give my team name and my individual name as the player. And then I would show my bracelet, and my bracelet would say S1. And that's how we would identify people. So the first step was to actually come to the contacts and to add the identifier from the bracelets on the player's contact. So the next thing we could do is we can imagine that player that we just identified, we just took their number and we put it in their contact. Now they want to actually load money on their account. So to do this, we just come to the invoicing app and we go to customers and then payments. And this is the payment page, and we can add a payment. And so again, we'll identify that user we were just looking at, again with the identifier. So the idea is once you have the bracelet, you don't have to try to lean over the bar and tell somebody your name at 1 a.m. when you're trying to order another beer. You just show them the bracelet, and they know exactly who you are. So we'll identify, we'll select the person, the amount, and then we can select in the journal how they're going to pay. So we accepted a bunch of different payment methods, PayPal, credit card through a SumUp payment terminal, also Twint, which is a Swiss-based payment method with a QR code, and then obviously cash. So in this case, we'll select cash. But so this was a huge improvement because in the past, we would just collect money in the cash box, and we would collect money on the payment terminal, and we would collect money on PayPal. But then at the end, we didn't really know if we had all the money that we should have had. We didn't have any traceability to that process. And by doing it this way, we actually knew exactly how much money we should have through each of those payment methods. So once we've created the payment, now we can switch to the next tab for the POS, and I'll just refresh the page so it uploads and kind of refreshes the fact that we just added money to that customer's account. And we'll come here and you can see we're just using the POS categories for drinks. We can also look at just the food, for example. We sold a lot of crepes during our event. We can also look at the merchandise, like we sell discs with our branding on them. We sell old jerseys and things like that, and tote bags and all of that. So in this case, let's say that user for which we just added the 50 francs, they want to buy a couple beers. And in this case, it's important to recognize that a lot of Ultimate Frisbee tournaments and the culture in general in Ultimate Frisbee is very sustainable. So we only use eco cups in our tournaments. So we don't have any plastic cups that's single use. So here you can see I'm adding 2 eco cups because there's a deposit on those. So we can add those, and then we can imagine, maybe they actually returned 3 cups at the same time. So you can do the return as a negative sales price directly in the POS as well. And so we'll get a couple cocktails too, and then maybe a couple crepes. And finally, now we're ready to select our customer. So again, we would ask them, okay, what's your bracelet number? And so here we see the first part of the customization where we have the balance for that user. And we're now going to proceed with the payment on the customer account. And that's it. In a few simple clicks, we finished the payment. Great. So as a next step, we'll now show you the partner ledger. So now if I come to the partner ledger, so again, this is the Oka module that we installed in the community edition. And if we search for, again, the bracelet, this is where we can now see for S1. We can find that contact, and we can see the money they loaded onto their account with the payments, as well as the invoices, the amounts that they spent in the point of sale. And so here we can see the balance. We could calculate the balance and see the balance. They still have $22 on their account. And so to complete the demo, I'll just come back to the point of sale, and we'll try to do another sale for more than $22, and I'll show you that the system actually blocks us from doing that. And that's the customization that we did with the Sidexis team. And here, we'll just refresh. So here you can see the amount updated. And if we go through, it won't let us complete the payment because the balance isn't enough anymore. Great. So that's it for the demo. That's what we did for the implementation for the Talampaya tournaments. If I keep going. Excuse me. Yeah, so we had a couple user testimonials that I wanted to share. So again, these were people who had never used Odoo before. And we went from basically everybody that runs the tournament is a volunteer. So we worked with volunteers who had never used Odoo before, and we taught them how to use Odoo for the point of sale and the payments management. And the real keys to success here were making sure that we had proactive hands-on user training, and that we had a super user from Sidexis, that was me if you haven't guessed it yet, who helped with the implementation at each step in the process. And obviously I was there to also train people hands-on during the tournament. Some of the improvements that we have planned for next year are that we actually want to use payment terminals that are integrated with Odoo next year. So we don't even need to have a customer account anymore, but we can just have people tap to pay directly at the point of sale. We also want to do emails and WhatsApp receipts from the point of sales, as well as kiosks and QR codes to actually collect the sales in real time. And so now I can reintroduce myself and confirm that, yes, I am also affiliated with Sidexis. So I'm the Director of Implementation for the European team at Sidexis. And Sidexis is an Odoo partner since 2012. We're 100% specialized in only Odoo. We really just do Odoo day in and day out. We love doing unique projects like Talampaya, for example. And so if you have any questions about Talampaya, Ultimate Frisbee, Sidexis, or how we can help you with any of your Odoo projects, feel free to put them in the pad or come meet me after the presentation. And then finally, I definitely want to thank all of the volunteers as well as the Orga committee that helped make Talampaya a reality this year, which you can see pictured here. And that's it, so I'll take any questions you might have now.
Beautiful, that was very interesting. Thank you very much. So we have 3 questions at the moment.
Oh, 3 questions, 3 Frisbees. What a coincidence. All right.
Beautiful. So why did you start on Odoo 16 and not under the latest version at the time? I guess it was the 17.
Yeah, so unless I'm mistaken, in 2023, it should have been V16, right? Because V18 just came out like 2 days ago, right? And then V17 would have been what was available starting in October of 2023. So yeah, the tournaments run in May. So in May 2023, the first time we used Odoo, the most recent version was V16. And I should also thank Stefan, the CEO of Sidexis, that helped sponsor the establishment of this project and the establishment of Odoo for the tournament. But we didn't have the capacity to migrate between versions, and there wasn't a lot of value added to migrate between versions. I mean, V17 is great, updated user interface. Definitely use it if you're starting a new Odoo project. But for us, we started with V16, which was the most recent version at the time, and we didn't get a chance to migrate for this particular project in the meantime.
Okay, well, we have another question that is linked to this one actually. So here the question is, do you consider switching to V17 or even 18 to be able to use these industries specific apps?
Is there an industry for Ultimate Frisbee tournaments? Because if there is, that would be very cool. But I don't think there is. And honestly, if I just go back a couple slides, the real question for me would be, is there anything in V17 or V18 for that matter now that helps with these things? If the answer is yes, then we would probably consider doing a migration for next year. But I'd have to look into it in more detail. I don't know if there's any payment terminal updates. I do think the kiosk and the QR codes scanning for ordering and the point of sale, I do think that changed. So yeah, maybe.
Okay, well, thank you. Why haven't you picked the event app to announce your tournament and receive registrations?
Good question. I don't think we needed any of the additional features in the event app, and it's a one event like program, I guess. So we just needed a simple form, and we needed like specific information in the form though, because the way it works is when you register your team, we don't just accept everybody. We usually have more teams apply than the number, unfortunately, that we can actually accept. So it's not like you just register as open registration, but we actually have to collect detailed information about, where's your team coming from, also how many players do you plan on bringing, and we also have like a comment section where we expect people to fill in very detailed information about how motivated they are to come to the tournament. So it just seemed like it made more sense to do that through a survey with all the fields you can add through the survey.
Okay, great, makes sense. So that's cool. We have a couple of questions here. So the next one will be, which functionality is the most useful one in a case like this, event management, let's say?
I would say the point of sale. Definitely the point of sale is where we get the most value because it gives us all the statistics after the event about what we actually sold. Everything else I mentioned, you could do pretty easily with another tool, right? Like, okay, we can, roll out another website through a dedicated website tool. We could do surveys through Google Forms. We can send a PDF document for an RFQ to a vendor. Project management, we can just not have it, which is what we did in the past, and we just do task management on the fly and like trust people to kind of do all the work. And then, yeah, inventory management added some value, but not, we didn't do it for all of the different products we sold. So I really think it was the point of sale that added the most value and enabled us to track what we sold, what we actually had a good margin on, what we should buy next year, what we ran out of, so we have to buy more of next year, that kind of thing.
Okay, great, thank you. So the next one is, do you use project planning Odoo app to coordinate the preparation?
Not at all. We just used the project tasks and like start and end dates, basically like deadline dates and assignees. That's all we needed. I'm not even sure if the project planning is available in the community edition. I'd have to look into that. We tried to use the planning app itself for managing the volunteer schedule during the event, and we actually found out that was part of the enterprise edition. And so we didn't want to pay for licenses for this kind of project, so we just decided to do the volunteer schedule in Excel in this case.
Okay, thanks. You talked about bracelets for teams, where the bracelets are customized, printed, and did Odoo play a part?
No, not at all. We just had like a identifier just like you saw in the demo. So Sidexis S, and then 1 for the first player, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. So we just had regular event bracelets that we bought that we wrote on with Sharpies, and that was it.
Okay, perfect. So let's go for the last one here. Did you face errors in consumers' balances?
No, there were just a couple things like we briefly saw in the demo with refresh errors. But thankfully, even in what we saw in the demo, if we don't refresh the point of sale POS, then the customer still can't buy above their balance. So there would just be like a moment of confusion, and then we'd refresh the page and it would be fine. But there was nobody who came to us through the weekend that was like, oh, this is definitely not correct, because through the partner ledger, one thing we didn't see in the demo is you can click into every single invoice in the partner ledger for every single sale and tell them exactly what was bought. And each person has their own bracelet. You can't take the bracelet off and put it back on. It's like your own event bracelet that's secure. So we didn't fear that people would try to use other people's accounts, since we could always identify people with the bracelets.
Okay, thank you very much for these answers and for the talk. It was very interesting.
Yeah, thank you.